Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live, everybody. Hey, I'm Morris Lilienthal. We have got a great guest about a topic that I know he is very passionate about. It is something that is very personal to him and something that's very important to me and I'm passionate about. And that is about the dangers of drunk driving and impaired driving and the number of lives every year that are impacted by people who are out there on our roads. And many of us have seen it. We look around and somebody's got a phone in their hands, or we hear the news story almost every night about a drunk driver hurting or killing someone. In fact, in the U.S., over 290,000 people each year are injured by drunk drivers, and over 10,000 people a year are killed by drunk drivers. And in 2018, according to some statistics I read, over 400,000 people were injured by distracted driving. It's dangerous, it's scary, and it's something that needs our attention. And I know our guest and his organization are very passionate about that. So I'm excited to have and honored to have as our guest today, Mike Lutzenkirchen. Mike is the executive director of the Lutzie 43 Foundation. And I'm going to have Mike's going to be talking to us a little bit about the mission of the organization and what they're striving to do to impact and make a change with people and drivers and their friends' decisions to drive safe and not drive impaired or distracted. Mike, thank you so much for taking time today, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Morris. I appreciate you reaching out to the foundation. I'm excited to share with you and your audience.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. And you know, as some people who watch our show, very rarely do we talk about the law on my show, but that's what I do for a living when I'm not doing the Mo Show or being a dad. Is I'm a lawyer and a trial lawyer, and a lot of times I help people who are the victims of distracted driving and or drunk driving, and I know that it's real. And folks, if you're watching the show today and you've got questions, let us know or give us a shout out and let us know. We'll be glad to get Mike those questions now. If you are watching the show or doing what a lot of people do is watch the replay or watching or listening to the podcast version of the show, we'll monitor all the comments to everything after the fact and get you some more information if you've got some questions about the foundation for Mike. Mike, I guess we'd start, many people, know your family's name and know your story from your son, Philip, and his playing days at Auburn. We were talking before we went live at, today's signing day, and this probably brings up some great memories of your son selecting a college and a happy memory that you look back on. But before we kind of dive into the foundation, give us a little backstory about your son, Philip, and what led up to before the foundation.
Sure. Our family is originally from the Chicago area, and we moved to Atlanta 22 years ago, a job transfer with IBM at the time. And we've got 4 children, Amy, Ann, Philip, and Abby. They range in age now from 27 to 32. And kids always knew where each other was through social media and being always connected to the internet and on their phones and so forth. I've been blessed. My wife, Mary, and I have been married 35 years, and our kids just have a wonderful relationship with one another. And Philip, was a big kid up from birth, always bigger than most kids his size. It was funny. We moved here, and within a week, he got picked out by some kids in the neighborhood. And one of the fathers that was coaching youth football, he started playing youth football in first grade. Went on to continue to play multiple sports. Went to Lassiter High School here in Marietta, Georgia. Ended up having a wonderful high school career in football and basketball, but became a high school All-American and was recruited nationally. And fell in love with Auburn University very, very quickly. He wanted to play in the SEC. He wanted to be close enough at home that he could get home if he needed to, but also knowing the family would get there. And I just fell in love with Auburn and had a wonderful experience down at Auburn University. He was a student there from 2009 to 2012. Very proud of Philip that he graduated in 3.5 years. I tell people all the time when I go speak, he didn't go to Auburn to be an attorney or a doctor or a CPA. He went down there to get a degree. He knew it was important. He was going to get that degree for free playing college football. Had a real goal to try to play in the NFL, but knew that the degree would be important if the NFL didn't work out, and ultimately Philip, it didn't work out. So, he graduated in December of 2012. He was a national champion as a sophomore, starting at H-back tight end. Most people know that team as the team that Cam Newton led to a 14-0 season. Philip went on to be a 2-time captain, had a wonderful opportunity to go to the NFL and had a couple significant injuries his senior year. So he ultimately went to the St. Louis Rams as a free agent, and he was their last cut in the 2013 season. Ended up moving to Montgomery, Alabama, and started to begin a career in wealth management.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know, I've remember that team and followed those Auburn teams. There were some great years in there that he was there, and as I recall, Mike, he was, and I think maybe still is the all-time leader in touchdowns for tight ends at Auburn. Is that right?
He was. He ended up with 14 career tight ends, and probably should say this based today being a few days after my friend Gus Malzahn was relinquished his duties of it at Auburn. But I always kid Gus. I still will next time I see him. He would have had 28 if he just threw to the tight end more often. But no, they found a way to use Phillip. He fit in that scheme very well. Phillip always had one of his many talents was he understood almost any room he walked in. And what I mean by that is when you walk in as a freshman at Auburn, he thought he should have been starting. Realized very quickly that there's some intricacies of playing at that level that are hand placement, foot placement, first steps, and things like that. It wasn't always about size, athleticism, and strength. But had a great mentor his freshman year in Tommy. I'm blanking on it. Tommy was a redshirt senior year, number 5. It'll come to me in a minute. I guess that's a sign of my old age. But Phillip understood the pecking order there and fit really well in at Auburn. Had a wonderful career down there and left with a few records.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know, can you kind of tell us then, Mike, what led to, Phillips passing and what led to the foundation being started and talking a little bit about the car accident that he and several others were involved in. I think it was in June of 2014.
Yeah, that's right. Morris, the last call that I had my son was on Friday evening, the 27th of June, 2014. It was a typical hot southern day here, and he called up to just check in with myself, Mary, and I. Philip and I spoke every single day. I tell people all the time, and my daughters understand it, Philip was my best friend. There's something unique about a father-son relationship that differs a little bit than a father-daughter relationship, and I've got great relationships with my 3 girls all collectively and as individuals, but he called in that day just to check in. We said, "What are you doing this weekend? Why don't you come home? We're blessed to have a lake house up on Lake Hartwell near Clemson University." And he said, "Dad, I'm going to hang out in Montgomery. I'll probably head up to Auburn." He just loved going to Auburn. And that weekend rolled around. It got to be Sunday morning, and came back from Catholic Mass with my wife, Mary, and our 2 older girls at the time. We're both living individually, separate places in Atlanta, but we're home that weekend. Our youngest daughter, Abby, which we've got this, I guess, humorous thing about our family is even though Philip was at Auburn University his sophomore year, our youngest daughter, Abby, decided to commit to Alabama to play soccer. So she was recruited nationally. And of all places she could have gone in the country to play soccer, she chose Alabama and ultimately had a wonderful career and experience there. So I say Roll Tide soccer with a lot of pride. That's the only time I say Roll Tide. But Abby was actually on a kind of a injury recovery soccer event. She was coming back from an ankle surgery, and she was allowed to go play a semi-pro soccer game that summer, just as part of her rehab before she went back for her junior year. And that Sunday morning, we came back from Mass, and I think everybody in your audience probably knows what a Post-it note is or a yellow sticky note. And now I guess they come in all kinds of different colors. Yeah. We came back from Mass that beautiful Sunday morning, and there was a yellow sticky note on our front door. It simply had, "Please call this number." It began with a 706 area code. And what we learned after the fact is that a Cobb County officer, we live in Marietta, which is in Cobb County, just north of Atlanta, sat in front of our house for about 30 minutes, ultimately to deliver the note, to make a phone call, or possibly to tell us that our son was killed in a car accident. Mm-hmm. So my wife and 2 daughters and I made it into the house, made it out to our back deck, called that number the first time and didn't get an answer, called it the next time. By that time, we all knew something was not good. And the second time I dialed that number, I got a live voice, and he said, "Sir, I need you to call another number." And at first I refused to do that. I pressed him really hard to say, "Tell me what's going on here. I'm not calling another number." And he said, "Sir, I don't have any details. I need you to take this number down and call it." And I called out the numbers, and Mary and the girls remembered those numbers, and I dialed it right away. At that time, I got a live voice on the first call, and it ended up being the coroner of Troup County, Georgia. And as I look back on it, he did his job just like he should have. He was very matter of fact and tried to have some passion, I believe, in his voice. But he said, "Mr. Lutzenkirchen, there was an accident last night, and Philip was killed." And that's how we learned of my son's passing, quite frankly, from a sticky note on our front door.
Wow.
And I don't know, Morris. I tell people all the time when I deliver our talk, we've been blessed to deliver about 400 talks over the last 4.5 years since we started the foundation. About 220,000 people have heard our talk. It's titled Phillips' legacy, what legacy are you leaving? And it's a very candid, straight to the from the heart talk about the elements that took my son's life, all too common elements, quite frankly. But also we tell about the wonderful things that Philip did in his life to serve others and never make it about himself. And let me make your audience understand. He's like all of us. He's a sinner. He was no angel. That's none of us are angels. But he just got it. He was just mature beyond his age. But that particular weekend, he and some friends went to a farm in LaGrange, Georgia. And what we learned is he was told, Philip, we're going to get there about 9 o'clock in the morning. From a geographical standpoint, from Montgomery up to LaGrange was going to take him a little over an hour. They said, bring what you want to eat and drink for the weekend because there's nowhere to go. We're not going anywhere. We're going to park here. We're not leaving until about 5 o'clock on a Sunday. So he's going to be there less than 48 hours, but they were going to go horseback riding, which he had never done. They were going to go mudding, which he had never done. So here's a kid born in Chicago who was going to do some true Southern things. And the day led through a lot of drinking by a bunch, about 13 kids that were all of age. And unfortunately, the driver of a vehicle decided at about 2 in the morning, 2:30, that he wanted to get a can of dip. And there was one 24-hour gas station, quick store, if you will, in LaGrange that Philip got in the back seat with a young lady, 2 young males in the front. All 4 of them went there. They had been drinking. They were speeding. 3 of the 4 weren't wearing seatbelts, and ultimately the driver missed a stop sign to either go left or right. And at about 70-plus miles an hour, he hit a shallow ravine and flipped a SUV that ended up going about 450 feet through the air. And I tell kids all the time, and it really hits home with them when you say the last page of an 8-page accident report is a graph reenacted of the accident, and it shows this vehicle upside down. It shows the driver as a stick figure up in the air, ajar, hanging out through his door, bent over with his name and DOA for dead on arrival. And then my son is shown as a stick figure laying 15 feet, found 15 feet from the vehicle with his name and DOA. And there's many lessons that have come out of this, quite frankly, that being a Christian and being a man of faith, God made it very easy for me to know what my will is the rest of my life here, is I need to use this story to hopefully impact others and change driving behaviors.
Yeah. Well, as a parent, my heart goes out to you and your wife and to your children and the family. Even after all these years, I know it is not easy for you to talk about and do, but I admire you guys so much for taking something that is such a dark thing in your life and trying to shine a light on a problem that that sadly caused your son to pass, but to hopefully make a difference through his legacy in helping others so other people don't make this same mistake. And that's where I'm really really just amazed at what you guys are doing, and that's why I wanted to have you on as a guest today. Folks, if you're just joining us, our guest today on the Motion Line is Mike Lutzenkirchen, and we're talking about the Lutzie 43 Foundation. And Mike has been sharing the story of his son Philip and the tragic accident that took his life and the lives of several others in his car. And Mike, I think what we hear there is that there was people in the vehicle unbuckled. There are people that probably were distracted driving, and people that the driver was impaired. And then I think that is kind of the cornerstone there of what your foundation was built upon. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about what the mission of the organization is, and kind of what I know you've got some varying things you guys over the years have done, and I know you've kind of drilled into one thing that you're really focusing on, but kind of tell us a little bit about the foundation itself, and then I'd like to drill down a little bit more on that 43 key seconds.
Yeah, Morris, today was a pretty standard day for me. That's developed over the last five and a half years since I lost Philip. I actually attended a webinar today that was delivered by other organizations. A young lady that started an organization because her mother was killed by a distracted driver. Another organization called the Kiefer Foundation out of Michigan, which quite frankly I didn't know much about until about Monday of this week. But the father there, Stephen Kiefer, founded that foundation because they lost their 18-year-old son to a distracted driver. Other participants in this were the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, GEICO. So it's just another effort by another family that has this tragedy of losing somebody because of a poor decision behind the wheel by another driver. And that's a pretty typical day for me. The foundation started relatively the very next day. I learned of, it was a Sunday that we learned of Philip passing away, and that Monday morning after not sleeping all night, I got out of the house and went for a run. And, being the typical male, I was probably thinking about myself a little bit too much and not about my wife and daughters. And I didn't take my phone with me as I went on this run through this location called Lita Thompson Park, not too far from us. We live on the edge of Marietta and Roswell, Georgia. And it was a very vivid run as I look back on that. I was by myself. It was about 6 a.m. It's about a 2.5-mile track. It's a cinder track up and down through the woods. It's beautiful. It was that time of day in the summer when the sun is starting to come through the trees. I remember crying. I remember kind of probably yelling out loud. But I also had a very vivid conversation as if Philip was right there next to me with his big face and his big smile saying, "Dad, it's going to be all right." And I do remember yelling, "Philip, I don't even know the details of everything that's going on. What took your life? What do you mean it's going to be all right?" But then God was with me, quite frankly. And between God and Philip, they looked at me and said, "What are you going to do with this?" And God placed on my heart to start thinking of words that I thought described my son's character. So words as funny as goofy, humorous, leader, protector, graceful, athletic, giving, caring, things like that. And when I got back to my car, I had about 90 plus texts and messages from my wife and 3 daughters. I truly believe they thought I might have been out there doing something to harm myself, losing your only boy. And that was far from what I was doing. I actually came back that morning, and after Mary kind of, hit me on the chest and crying and said, "You can't stay away from us. You got to communicate with her." I actually grabbed her by the face and vividly remember saying, "Mary, I actually smiled for a moment this morning." And she didn't understand it at first. And I am so blessed. I had so many people say to me, "Morris, you've got to be careful that this doesn't break apart your marriage." The loss of a child. And I said, that's never going to happen. I've known my wife since 2nd grade. I jokingly say this partly, but she foolishly said yes when I asked her to marry me. She continues to let me in the door, even though I could be a whole lot better of a person than I am. I'm just blessed to have this wonderful woman in my life. But I actually smiled that moment briefly that morning, thinking of my son. And I'll be honest with you, the whole of my heart, it's still there. It's closed a lot from losing Philip. Man, it just pops open every now and then, and it's very sorrowful and so forth. But it closes to a degree, and you get motivated to go do something with who Philip was. And I tell people all the time, if Philip was just a football player at Auburn that had a couple records, that won a national championship, that became a captain, and he wasn't a good person away from the field, we wouldn't be doing this foundation. But he built such an incredible platform that what he was known for off the field, as much, if not more, than what he did on the field. That's why we have this platform, to tell that story and so forth. And if you think about the elements that were present that weekend, they were driving well after midnight. And I tell teenage kids in college all the time, there is no reason for you to be on the road after midnight. The number of drunk drivers on our roadway just accelerates after midnight. And I tell them all the time, you might get lucky and manage that deer that darts across the road, or you might get lucky and manage that storm that pops up going through construction zone. But there's no luck involved trying to take on a drunk driver that's coming at you head on. So you just got to stay off the roads. Absolutely. Such another strong lesson in this is the one young man that sat in the passenger seat front, put his seatbelt on, a 2.5 second to just reach your shoulder and plug it in, snap it in. He unbuckled his seatbelt. He sustained a concussion. He ran for help. The driver was ejected partly out of the vehicle. My son was ejected. The young lady in the back seat, she was ejected. She was read her last rites. But by a miracle of God, she survived this. They were speeding and they were drinking. All elements that just make this story, you have to share it. You have to learn, share these lessons that you got to change. So the combination of building those words, and I brought those words home from a Starbucks that Philip and I had gone to. I wrote those words after I ran that day after, and I wadded them up on those recyclable brown, napkins you get at a Starbucks. And my daughter, Ann, my second oldest daughter, said, "Dad, what are you going to do with those?" I said, "Ann, I don't know yet, but there's something we're going to do. There's something that's going to come out of this as a positive." So a few weeks later, between Mary and Abby, our youngest, and Amy, our oldest, and Ann, we wrote down all these words that we thought described Philip's character. And we created a curriculum called 43 Lessons to Legacy. We're very proud of it. Several weeks after Philip passed away, I had the first high school football program that Philip had played against reached out to me and said, "Mike, can you come speak to my team?" We've already had our 3 first days of fall practice in 2013, or I'm sorry, 2014. And I've already learned of most of my kids went to a party over the weekend, and many of them were drinking. And then University of Georgia and Mark Richt and Dabo Sweeney and Clemson, teams that recruited Philip, we played against, asked me to come talk to their teams. And we were blessed that ESPN reached out to us through Auburn and said, we'd like to do a game day feature piece that ultimately played that fall. So we had such a beautiful start towards this foundation. And Morris, I'll tell you, the Auburn family, we had a wonderful experience in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with Abby for 4 years. But this Auburn family, all of a sudden, within days of Philip passing away, we're receiving checks in the mail for $43, for $25, for $430. And this was money that's not our family's. We put it into account and said, when we build this foundation, we'll have the beginning of a financial stability to go forward with it. And the Auburn family continues to support us. So that's how this foundation came about.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's just, it's such a tragic story, but to think that, something in here and up here, said that you need to do something with this to impact others and to see the outpouring of support that you got, because this is truly something that impacts all of us. And we see it every day. And people think, well, I'm just buzzed a little bit and I can drive, or it's not far, it's just 2 or 3 miles down the road and I can do. And that's probably, maybe what we've been going on here. It's late, there's not going to be anybody on the road kind of thing. We're just going down to the store to make a quick run. Who knows, but that's what it is. Mike, take a little bit. I know kind of you guys have developed this 43 key seconds as kind of a focal point of the foundation now. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what that is? I know you kind of have some points there and things and why you're focusing on it. I think you've got even there, maybe you could show us one of the representative keys there that you're using to get in people's hands to be an actual physical reminder of the key points of what this program is.
Yeah, absolutely, Morris. This back in March of 2018, so from a timeline perspective, this foundation started in concept in August of 2014. We received our official nonprofit status in November of 2014. So we were already at this for 4 years almost when you think about March of 2018. And somebody asked me 2 key questions. And I was already thinking about these questions, but the questions were, it was from an individual I really didn't know. He said, Mike, are you proud of what the foundation's accomplished? And are you concerned about Phillips' relevancy? And there were great questions. And yes, I'm proud of what we've done, but there's so much more to do. I wake up every day, and thankfully you can't see my desk because it's a mess. How do I get minutia off my desk running this foundation to do something simple? And that's get this into the hands of drivers ages 15, just getting a permit, through 65, 70 years old. And I'll come back to this in just a minute. But then the question about Phillips' relevancy, every day I wake up is one more day past my son's time here on earth. Every mile I get out of the Southeast, even though we have a unique last name, even though Philip played on national television and he was recruited nationally, there's fewer people know who he was. That he went to Auburn University, why our foundation uses the Auburn blue and orange colors as our main themes. But I started to look at some things. We did some research starting in March of 18, and we recognized there is simply no national symbol that if I asked you, Morris, tell me what the symbol is when you see it, triggers you not to be a distracted or an impaired driver. And the way I really get high school, law school assemblies going at this, or corporate events I speak to, is I'll ask people, large audience, say, tell me what comes to mind when I ask you what the color pink means. And the number one answer that most people come up with is, well, that's breast cancer awareness. Yep. If I were to say and show them the symbol for the Wounded Warrior Project, almost everybody knows that's to take care of our military that's been wounded, protecting the greatest country in the world. The simplest one I'll get kids going is if I show you a big golden M, they all know it's McDonald's. And then you just flabbergast when you say, yell out the first thing that comes to mind, what is the national symbol that triggers you not to be distracted or impaired behind the wheel? And you get a blank stare, you get a bunch of ums, and then ultimately somebody yells out, well, that's a phone. Well, that's a phone in a circle with a slash through it. Well, so that's interesting, right? Certainly is a distraction. It's certainly a symbol. But the number 2 distraction for any female driver, regardless of age, is putting on makeup. The number 3 or 4, they change every now and then for a teenage driver as a distraction, is eating with that Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Popeyes on her lap. Here's the reality. There's simply no symbol. So we took it upon ourselves to say, wait, Philip War number 43, could we create a symbol? What if we were to take and put a regular key? Everybody knows what a key is. A 2-year-old knows what a key is. This won't open any door, but it says 43 key seconds on it. And on the back of our standard key, it would say 43 and the word TO, so 43 too distracted free. We said, what if we put that key on a lanyard? For some reason, everybody loves lanyards. It's like going to a baseball game, and regardless if you're a baseball fan or not, when that foul ball's coming at you, everybody sticks that bare hand up to try to get it. If you go to a sporting event and they've got that T-shirt gun out, right? Everybody wants to get a $5 T-shirt. They fight over it. So lanyards are so popular. We said, what if we put that key on a lanyard? But more importantly, what if we created a countdown? And I don't know that your audience can see that, but it's a countdown. We said, what if you take 43 seconds before you start any type of vehicle, a semi-truck, tractor trailer, a pickup, an SUV, a car, and you said, what if I went through 43 seconds and said, do I have a clear head, clear hands, clear eyes? And then the last step is we do tie into a national program that's 20 years old, which is Click It or Ticket. It says click it. What does a clear head mean? It means you sit there behind that car, that wheel, and say, am I drug impaired, alcohol impaired? Am I emotionally impaired? Am I fatigued? Am I technology impaired? If you're not, you move down. What a clear head. Is my head ready to drive? Am I ready to look at my rearview mirror, look out my side? Have I told my passengers, hey, I'm not going anywhere until you put your seatbelt on? And do I have clear hands? Have I done my texting, my Facebook living? Have I looked at my emails? Have I set my dashboard GPS? Have I placed my phone on the dash or in a cup holder? Am I willing to be a hands-free driver? And let me stop for just a minute. This is where I get on my soapbox. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, Morris, but why does Georgia have a hands-free law, but Alabama doesn't? Why does Alabama have a back seat requirement to wear a seatbelt, but the state I live in, Georgia, doesn't? There's only 27 states that have a hands-free law. And Georgia enacted one back on July 1st of 2018. If you looked at the statistics of the lives saved since installing that law, boy, I hope Alabama legislature gets together and passes over to Alabama, because I'm a huge proponent of it. When I drive into Birmingham or to Huntsville, as soon as I cross state lines, you see people out of Georgia just take that off their dashboard. Now they hold it because they're in Alabama. And quite frankly, here in Georgia, sometimes you don't even know that it exists because people are just ignoring it. But there was no symbol. So we said, what if we create this countdown? The goal is you remove this card from the lanyard and the key. And you take that lanyard and the key and you place it around your rearview mirror as a constant visual reminder to not be a distracted or an impaired driver. And a young high school student, within weeks of us launching this, said, Mr. Lutz, that key's a tool. That student was absolutely right. It's a tool because I believe regardless of intellect, regardless of income level, whether you live in a rural area, city area, everybody knows what a key is, and everybody has a behavioral change based on visual triggers. So that's what 43 key seconds is all about. What's really exciting, Morris, and I apologize for dominating this conversation.
No, this is about you and your organization. Absolutely.
We put on our standard lanyard 43 key seconds and 43 distracted free. But all of a sudden we had a high school say, hey, Mike, can we put our logo on that? Yeah. We said, absolutely. And then we had Nucor Steel, not too far from you in Decatur, Alabama, with 800 employees, said, Mike, we need you to speak in back-to-back safety events for our employees, that we encourage them to have their spouses come to the dinner and their driving age children. And Mike, while you're here, we want to give all our employees Nucor co-branded lanyards, countdown cards, and keys. And oh, by the way, Mike, we've got a corporate partners in education program. Would you go speak at 2 high schools if we funded it? And I said, on one condition, if you're willing to fund tri-branded. So recently, a good example, I spoke at Winfield High School. Chris Cook, the superintendent up there, said, Mike, I need you to come up. And on this lanyard, it has Winfield High School's logo on it, pirate-like logo. It has State Farm's logo on it because a local agent paid for every one of these students and faculty to get these. And then all the branding goes on our lanyard or on our card. So everywhere you look, there's a branding opportunity. And I'm very convinced, after over literally a year plus doing this, that when kids see their high school logo on that key, it means something to them. I'm in the band, I'm in debate, I'm an athlete. At a minimum, hey, I've got to go work after school to help my family, but I go to that school, I've got a passion for that logo. Kids embrace this message when they see something that's part of them.
Yeah.
So we're so excited about what 43 Key Seconds is all about, what it's doing.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. And you know, I've represented many victims and families of victims who've lost someone or been injured because of a distracted driver or a drunk driver. But there is not one symbol. There is and you know, there are a lot of organizations out there fighting this battle. But like you said, when you say pink, the first thing I think about is breast cancer research and breast cancer awareness. And we all have something, and sometimes it just takes a little trigger. Oh yeah, I need to buckle up. Oh yeah, let me put this down, because they're gonna reflect back either upon your story, because that's why they got the organization's story to why they got the key to put it in their vehicle, or somebody that they relate to that maybe that's personal to them, that they lost or was injured in an accident like this. And I think it's so important, and I don't think people realize how big of a deal this is, because, and it's not, like you said, it's, you know, there's really no excuse. I mean, it's from drunk driving, we've got Uber and Lyft, you know, in smaller cities, there's just things that people just need to be more aware of it. If you get in a vehicle and you see that key, it's like, man, I think I'm okay, but maybe let me just call an Uber and I'll leave my car here for the night, and I can come back tomorrow and get it. You know, and I've had cases where people, as you said, a lot of people think of distracted driving, and often we do, it's the cell phone. But I've had situations where people were injured when someone's looking back to hand their child something in a car seat. And you've got to stay focused on what's going on. And I love that symbolism and that resemblance of the key, thinking about everything, and then tying back to Phillips' legacy and sharing that. That's truly amazing. And so, as we get ready to wrap up, I want to be mindful of your time here, Mike. If people want to co-brand a key with you, if an organization wants to do that, or if people want to purchase a key or several keys maybe to give to their children, is the best place to do is to go to y'all's website and do it through there?
Absolutely. You know, if you go to our website, which is www.lutzie43.org, thanks for putting that up. You can go or send an email to mike@lutzie43.org, and it'll come directly to me, or you can go to info@lutzie43.org, and you can inquire about how we do this as a partnership to do a co-branded or a tri-branded for your family right away. You can go to Amazon right now, and if you search Lutzie43, you'll find out there's a key theme in Alabama color, Georgia color, Auburn color. I apologize. You know, you're pretty close to Tennessee. We haven't done one for Tennessee yet, but we're not going to do anything that's going to be a violation of a brand or so forth, or, you know, and so forth. But we would love to talk to you, because here's what's really powerful. When you go into high school, you know, you've got 14 to 19-year-olds in there. You've got freshmen through seniors. The first class and a half, that freshman and half of your sophomores, they're not driving yet. But if you ask a series of questions, and I ask kids to be honest with me all the time, raise your hand. I don't want to see little alligator, you know, arms. I love them to go real high. Raise your hand if you know what distracted driving is. And 100% of the hands are going like this.
Absolutely.
Then you come back and say, now you got to be a little more honest with me. Raise your hand if you've got a driver's license, and in the last week you've driven distracted. You get a lot of this. Yeah. They look around and it goes up. 80% of the hands go up. Here's a tough thing about high school kids, right? The last question I ask is, raise your hand if your mom or your dad is typically distracted when you're riding with them. And it's like, boom. So regardless, your 5-year-old sitting in a car knows when you're on your phone. They watch what we do. The other thing I would share with your audience is, if you're listening from a state that doesn't have a mandate of hands-free, if you're listening from Georgia and we don't have a mandate to wear a seatbelt in the back seat, you don't need your government to create a law for you to do what's right. You just choose to do what's right. You choose to say, you know what? For $15, I can go buy that in-dash mount, and that's where my phone's going to sit, or it's going to sit in my cup holder. Some people go to the extreme. You know what? I'm leaving this in my gym bag in the trunk of my car. It's more important. I'll get there. That email, that text, I'll respond when I get there. And again, to be true to your audience, before I lost my son, I was pretty good, Morris, driving on I-20 or I-65 in your state. And if there was nobody next to me and nobody a mile ahead, a mile behind, I got pretty good at doing this and think I could read a text. I'd be such a hypocrite if I do that now, so I don't. I've broken that habit. If you try something for 21 straight days, deliberately, it becomes a habit, good or bad.
Yeah.
You've got to do it. It's 9 people will die in this country today from distracted driving. And my son used to touch people of all ages, from a 5-year-old to a 65-year-old, because he played football and they liked to watch him play or because he treated them right. Here's the reality. Phillips is still touching people because you know why? The number one cause of death for a 15 to 18-year-old is distracted driving. Yeah. The number one cause of death for our college students ages 19 to 23 is a combination of distracted and impaired. And here's the kicker. The number one cause of death for somebody in corporate America is a motor vehicle crash. So as we get to be adults, that's what the government uses, MVC, motor vehicle crashes. So think about that. From age 15 to 65 plus, getting behind the wheel of a car, you as an unsafe driver or an unsafe driver on the road connects with you, it's the number one cause that can take us off this earth. This is a huge initiative, our goal to close for you, Morris. I truly believe in my heart, one day I'm going to find out a new 16-year-old boy or girl driver in Portland, Maine, and a 65-year-old driver in Portland, Oregon, who don't say Roll Tide or War Eagle, don't know that my son played at Auburn, don't know what the colors are, don't even know about Phillips, don't know who I am, but they're going to see the number 43 and or the number 43 on a key, and they're going to know that's their trigger to put their phone down, to wear their seatbelt, to set their phone on the dash, to set their mirror right, to look around, to not be the first car in an intersection when you're at a stoplight and the light turns green. This is going to become a national symbol. That's my passion. That's what we're all doing. We've got wonderful support. We have a great board. We've got a great PR group in Birmingham by the name of Night Edie Sports Group. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited about what 43 Key Seconds is doing and will continue to do.
Well, I'm 100% with you, and this is something that I hope that as time moves on, that you are getting these keys in the more and more hands of more and more vehicles, and it's something that needs this attention. And I think every time you speak to someone and you're potentially and you're going to be changing lives and impacting lives. And one thing that I will tell you too that you hammered on right before that, and that's for parents. Parents, we are setting an example for our kids, and if we're driving just to the store without our seatbelt on, or if we're driving and distracted, they recognize that, and they think that that's okay. So please set a good example. And speaking of that too, another thing too, Mike, that I see a lot and do is please make sure that your children are in a properly approved and buckled in child seat or car seat or buckled in. We see too many times in accidents where kids are not in the age appropriate child care seat, or they're just kind of sat in there and the seat's not properly strapped down. So buckle up and follow these rules of clear head, clear hands, clear eyes, and click it. And Mike, thank you so much for all that you're doing and taking a tragedy for your family and turning it into something that's going to be a shining light. And I know that this is going to be a symbol for others to do the right thing when they get in and be a good example and a good driver to, lead the way to get everybody from point A to point B safely. And Mike, thank you so much for your time. And folks, if you want to know more one more time, please go to the website there, Lutzie43.org, and check it out. You can find more information about how to get a key. You can reach out to Mike if you want to see about getting him to come speak to your organization. A lot of great information there. And Mike, thank you so much for your time, sir, and I wish you guys the best of luck.
Hey, Morris, thank you for reaching out. I'm a stranger to you. Thank you for you being willing to do something outside of your day-to-day job, being an attorney and a dad and a husband, by putting something out there meaningful for your listeners. So thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
You too, sir. Everybody, take care and happy holidays and stay safe, everybody.